Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the podcast, the show, the number one place to get news, information, and reflection on game development and the lifestyle of game developers. My name is Larry Charles. I am one half of the team that brings this podcast, and the other half, sitting to my right, he's up 24 hours a day getting better at Dota Underworld so that we don't have a bad showing next time we do Backseat Gamer, Mr. Brandon Pham.
Entirely not sure. This is Brandon Pham. Have not just this game since. Welcome to the 200th episode of Game Dev Unchained, the original podcast that brought us to you and within your viewership landscape, right? This is a special episode, obviously being a 200th episode with just us. We don't have a special guest because we want to dedicate it to us and celebrate us once in a while. And so for anyone that have been seeing and been with us, we are almost approaching our fourth year, right? If I do the math, you said it was 8 episodes away.
So if you do 52 times 4, that's 108.
That's what I said. Surprisingly, Larry is a better mathematician than I am.
No, not at all. We both know how to use a calculator, so that's all that matters.
So, for this episode, we have reached certain aspects at the beginning of the year that we proposed to ourselves, and have always eclipsed it every year that we've been in broadcasting, right? If we go back to our January episode, our New Year episode, where we're talking about, this idea of maybe creating eventually a convention as our master goal, right? We did an online convention. We called it GDucks, and was able to pull it off within 2 months. And it wasn't even an idea, really. It wasn't until we sat down, pen with paper, and say, let's do this, where we hatched a rough plan to kind of combat what we felt like was underserved within the game development community. And 2 months later, we had 20 speakers with us and went 3 days straight, 7 hours of content each day. And that has opened up opportunities that we didn't even anticipate. And so we already are planning for their second one. We're already talking to speakers, sponsors, and marketing partners. And we're kind of going to throw this out there, right? So if you are a game developer, if you are having a software or anything of that sort, we are opening it up to sponsorship. If you want to have exposure for your product or game or whatever, please contact us at info@gamedevunchained.com. We are actively looking for speakers as well. We already have our list of our own that we're going down. And it's going to be a similar 18 to 21 speaker list. If you are interested, if you are interesting, definitely go ahead and email us and talk. Let's talk. Because if you're a listener of the podcast, you know the type of content that we are looking for. We're looking for timeless talks about the game development scene that anybody can discover 5-10 years down the line and still apply it to their own lives.
Wisdom, not tutorials.
Tutorials are not our thing. It's actually good for our Game School Online show.
Postmortems even count. They're hey, here's how we messed up and here's what we learned.
Yes,
that can work.
That could work too.
Yeah.
So if you're a speaker, sponsor, or you're interested in being a part of GDucks, please let us know. And speaking of GDucks, it being so successful, having speakers and having people tune in and listen to these speakers and watching the replays, we are adding a component, or at least toying with the idea of bringing the game into the game development talks. As in the first 3 days we're playing with keeping the same format.
GDucks?
Yeah, the GDucks, where we have speakers, invite speakers, have the intermissions, we talk about sponsors, all that stuff. But we're thinking of extending the 3 days to 5 full days, where the last 2 days are completely dedicated to like a backseat gaming type of show. So if you are a participant in any of our other shows besides Game Dev Unchained, thank you. If you're not, what's taking you so long? Go over and watch the other ones. Backseat Gamer is essentially Larry and I playing through games, right? And we feel like the last 2 days of GDucks could be dedicated to celebrating and creating a platform for any indie developers out there that want to showcase their games in front of an audience. And I think it'd be really fun actually playing the games ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so we are opening up submission for that as well. So there's 3 layers of GDucks, and the 3rd layer being playing games. So if you feel like you have a prototype or games that can be beneficial and is able to put in front of the stage and benefit from it in November, which is our next GDucks.
PC only.
PC preferably.
Well, I guess if you have a PlayStation.
You have a PlayStation.
Well, you have it.
You have an Xbox as well.
I sold the Xbox.
Yeah. Well, PC preferably, right? If you can give us something that we can play with, we will dedicate like an hour. We're thinking about an hour each game. We'll see how long that goes. But of course, we're reaching out to our speakers to kind of throw into that pot. But we feel like it's a very cool thing because not a lot of shows can dedicate and give press to great games. And so there is a vetting process. We're not just gonna copy and paste whatever you send to us. We have to make sure it's worth it.
Here's my browser game.
Yeah, don't be offended. No
disrespect to browser games.
Yeah, don't be offended. Yeah. Right, but we have to. There's a vetting process. But don't be discouraged to submit and talk to us. info@gamedevunchained.com. All right, so that wraps up GDucks. So at this point, let's talk about what 200th episode means to you. Do you feel like a better game developer at this point?
Well, I feel more wise.
Yeah.
I feel like we've built some good connections, and I feel like we've told some great stories.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel inspired. Other times I feel entertained.
Yeah.
Usually you're getting a little mix of both of those. Mm-hmm. And then I've learned a lot about just parts of game development that I thought I had an idea about, that I learned that either I was way off or I got some perspective and depth. So I think overall I had 200 episodes of like 1 hour's worth of education and insight into an industry that is still very enigmatic for a lot of people out there. There's a lot of stuff I realize I still don't understand, like why some business decisions go the way that they do, why I feel like companies don't value employees, and all those protests that you hear us frequently like banging the desk on. So,
let's dig into some specifics, right? Of course, we don't have our list of guests, and everyone has like amazing attributes, obviously. That's why we invited them on. That's why we continuously try to invite them back to GDucks and do like a dedicated talk. I'll start first, right? So with the many guests that we've had, I think we were, before starting the podcast, pretty naive in how the game industry was, right? Although our sentiment was, I think, largely remained unchanged, right? As in the game development scene is a tough industry, and a lot of people are hurting. There needs to be a solution, right? I think there was a lot of nuances with like, we would have Zach Rich on talking about the laws and legislation of actually opening up a game company, right? And like what it means to actually own a piece of the business. And like there's so many things that we would assume as a business that you would have to really spell it out in a written consent to have everybody agree, and so that all these scenarios that might play off from what you imagine would actually be on paper, so that you can always point it back and give accountability to, right? Yeah. I didn't ever really think that far, right? And I think that essentially with every guest helped us, at least me, kind of pave the way of what the realities are, because maybe I thought of it, but I didn't think of it that far. And thankfully our guest was able to educate us on that stuff. Another situation was, when we started off the podcast, we had a lot of our friends on, right?
Well, our friends are professionals, but yeah, we did have a lot of like, hey man, do us a favor. Let's try to build this podcast, and can you, bring some of your audience? And like Kalen Chalk. Yeah. Kalen Chalk, hardcore friend of ours who like has always been in support of what we've done. Right. And I will always shout him out as like, he was like day one ready. Yeah. When we were like thinking about it, So Kalen, special shout out to you specifically, man. you brought a lot of heat and energy to a lot of the projects that we've done.
Yeah.
And I owe you so much in life, man. So yeah, seriously, thank you.
Kaylin, Tav,
Man, Tav again.
Kurt Papstein. Yep. I mean, these are friends that are.
Anthony Jones came through.
Yeah.
He was like, "Oh, Kaylin did it. All right, okay."
Yeah. These
I know
guys.
somebody who's been on your podcast. I can do it.
Yeah, these are legitimate badasses that help us pave the way, but also gave us an opportunity to kind of sit down and have a real conversation, which I've realized was a missing part of my life. It's like, how often do you sit with a friend and talk for an hour straight? Not that much. I mean, you banter here and there, you laugh and stuff, but when you talk about real life issues, not often enough. And that the podcast has transformed my way to communicate with people and dig in, because, you know, we're not antisocial, clearly, right? I think I'm more antisocial than you, to be honest, because you have the ability to talk to anyone. I do too, but I close off. I'm very selective.
You're not good at being talked to. You don't mind talking with, but you don't like being talked to.
Talk to, yeah. I think we share that sentiment, though.
All your examples of how you get out of conversation.
Yeah, there's a certain element, especially in the business of talking, right? And because we're podcasting, but also as a game developer, as we've learned, networking is a huge component to that. And we talk to many guests that talk about how to engage and stay engaged with potential business partners, right? I still find it hard. For me to really dedicate myself to everybody. You know what I mean? You have that special ability, even before and after, right? To kind of have someone and give your attention to them. And I just say no. I still am at the edge.
It's all heart. To be honest, like my thing about talking or just giving people time is just, I care, even if I don't know you, I care just that you are a person who has given time out of their life to whatever we're doing. Yeah. And I don't want that to be wasted on like me having an attitude or like whatever bad thing. Like if you're engaging on something that I love as well, that's a moment. You know what I mean? Yeah. Even if I realize like, oh damn, you're like super fan. I'm not that far in. I'm still gonna like, you know, respectfully let you say what you need to say, because I keep having these examples of like times where it's gone too far. And I was just like, shit, man.
I'm watching a marathon sometimes. And it's like, how long is Larry's going to last with this? Like, he has no out. He has no out game, dude.
I care very much about feelings, right? Like my own and other people's. And that gets me in trouble because I'll endure. I will sit there and endure and like just be like, I'll try to be like, hey, you know, it's I got to go. And they're like, okay, cool. But then I was thinking about this, and that. And usually I'm just like, I'm just going to, you know, I'm going to try it again. Because the last thing I want to do is like in cancel culture days, the last thing I'm like, Jesus Christ, I got to go. Yeah. Because then all that they remember is that like you looked at them in the face and got mad and said, Jesus Christ, I got to go. And then they tell all their Twitter people and all this and all that. And I don't want to create those kind of interactions. I have no problem just talking to anybody, listening to them, let them say what they got to say.
I'm willing to take the risk. Yeah. That's what I got going there. I'm willing to take the risk, and I will be that asshole on this partnership to kind of chime in and be like, "Hey, we got a meeting, right, Larry? Oh man, sorry, dude. I'll do it in a nice way.
No, yeah,
but one of us has to be that guy.
It's fine. I don't consider it a weakness or anything. I know me very well, and I usually endure or allow more than most people will just cut it off, because I feel like they'll think about like how they feel if they want to get out for themselves, where I'm always the like, I don't want to hurt that guy's feelings. Like he seems like he buys a lot of games, he supports people in my industry, you know, he's talking to a developer right now, like I don't want to shit on them. Okay, I'll just be 10 minutes late. Then if I'm 10 minutes late, I'm like, okay, hey man, look, please, I gotta go. I'm so happy. Here's my like email or whatever. Like say everything to my email and I'll get in touch.
Well, you're a fantastic casual talker. We can basically say we're a professional talker now.
Yeah, we got it down now. So what did you feel helped with your talk game by having Game Dev Unchained as a podcast? Like interviewing like over to, let's say 150, right? 150. I'll say this.
There's a lot of filler episodes in there.
We have never scripted any of the talks that we've had. We've had like talking points as in 3 things that we might want to somehow get the conversation to go towards. But we've never actually like Okay, so
Yeah,
did
5
you
minute. Yeah,
have this and that kind of an experience when you were working at such a place? We've never done like
it was
an actual
pure driven by curiosity.
So I guess what doing this podcast has gotten me better at is like just kind of being familiar with what my talking points are going to be, knowing who we're going to bring on, and like just having some assumptions of where conversation can lead to, storing it all in my brain, and then being able to kind of transition or navigate the conversation as needed to try to reach certain points or dialogues that I thought would have been critical to the episode. All still on the fly. And like,
well, you've always been good on the fly, though. That's the thing. So do you feel like it got?
Compliment yourself, man. what good things have you done?
I'm not on the fly. Yes, this episode. I mean, this podcast has given us so much good content and good guests that we continuously build relations with, right? And it gave attention to a lot of the roles and disciplines that make this crazy industry work as a whole in a huge way. It gave me tremendous perspective in ways that I didn't even imagine, right? Because we started the podcast very naively thinking about, I want to scream, give me a mic so I can scream into it, right? But even if you go back to the early episode, we joke about that. We had some nuggets. We had a clear goal of trying like talking to our friends and any other person to make sure that we try to make lessons out of it, right? Not to just purely complain. I don't think we hit our real stride and rhythm until like maybe a year after, where we finally started to get really big guests. Not to like downplay any of the guests before, but you mean like guests that I didn't even think that
guests that had clout that we didn't have a personal connection to.
Exactly.
That's the best way.
We were reaching out networks way outside ours, and was basically able to give game developers a platform that they didn't have before. If we were to track all these game development podcasts 4 years before to now, there's so much more on the Apple Podcast form. And I have to say, we're the pioneers to that. You welcome everybody.
There's a lot of 3-letter acronym podcasts that started popping up. Game dev, blank, 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 blank. Game dev this, game dev that.
I think we really strengthened game dev instead of game developer, you know what I mean? Or game development. But it gives us a lot of pride because these are conversations that used to be taking place in the alleyway, right? Away from anybody that has power.
Well, nobody wants to record themselves giving an opinion these days when they need their job. That's the first thing you know. Is like, that's probably why.
Yeah, me and you, when we first started, that was our number one fear, like talking openly about the problems. But 4 years later, we're like, whatever. Well, who's next?
I think the pivots that we made, though, were smart, right? Like, we were leaving Activision at the time, and then we both went to independently owned studios. And then I went to another independently owned studio where I knew that, like, so long as they knew I was doing my job, it wasn't like I was going to cause any conflicts if I was out there like, hey, here's my opinion on this news story. Had I gone to like a EA or a Blizzard or, you know, like a big like for-profit, like publicly traded company type game studio, I'm pretty sure there would have been difficulties.
Yes. Let's kind of piggyback on that. The podcast has formulated my career ever since we started because knowing how the podcast was so important to me and talking to developers having issues at these big studios made me at least confirm my decision of staying away from big studios that at least didn't allow me to do outside ventures, right? Because I knew it was a way to trap myself into this idea of enslavement to my job, right? And so every decision I've made was purely about smaller studio that allowed me to do things on the side, which is the podcast, which is a huge factor, right? I understand not every employer wants their employee openly talking about the game industry, right? It's a potential conflict of interest. And it's the number one joke that I tell all my friends who starts gossip, because we still hear gossip as you would working in the game industry, right? Or any industry, about why this is happening, why this studio is doing this, all these harassment stuff, like who's affected, are they really changing? We all hear that. And I always joke, it's like, you can tell me, man, I'm just a podcaster. All I do is just talk about these problems. But with full confidence, I'm not going to share to jeopardize anybody's
of course.
job.
Like
Yeah.
I'll say that like we've heard things that like we weren't allowed
We
to say
still
or
hear
share, and, like,
things
still
that we
hear
haven't
things
shared
that
it
we can't
yet.
share. But like everybody does, to be honest.
Yeah.
Everybody has small talk. Even when you work for those companies, like don't say or do this or do that. Those people go home and have their best friends who are like, "Yo, my boss is tripping."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like those conversations are happening left and right. So I don't feel bad about that.
I don't feel bad at all. And we won't, divulge the details. What we do is we get guests about these details. And that helps us navigate.
You're a lawyer, right?
The issues.
So say we were talking about a company that was having such and such go on.
And that has helped tremendously. Yeah. Like we've gotten to 200 episodes, and it's been so easy. It's been so easy where we're at a point where it books itself. Like I'm not actively going out there trying to vie for guests because we're a viable platform now. Mm-hmm. It's gotten to a point where interesting people are coming to us, and we just book them and we talk to them, and it's fun. It's still very fun, and I'm constantly still learning about the industry, even though it feels like we're in a niche market. It feels like, yes, we're fucked. Now what? Mm-hmm. There's so many avenues that we haven't even discovered. The last time we talked to a guest that is an upcoming episode talking about Google Home and Alexa being a gaming platform. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
As a game developer, I never heard of that. Yeah. But then it started to make sense as we discussed through it. It's like, oh shit, yeah, that's right. Wow, is that what they're doing over there? And that's going to be cool. Every day. Technologies are going to come on board. Game developers are going to have more options than ever before.
Opportunities are going to be created. Ways that you can implement or like ways you can be valuable even as a game developer are just going to continue to, I guess, grow outside of game development, right? Like engines being, real-time rendering platforms for movies and previs and things like that. That's new. Yeah. Simulations and physics. And as we were talking about Tesla, SpaceX, and NASA, like, hey, let's use Unreal, create this simulation to see if like we should spend all this money to make this rocket for this specific mission. Yeah. We can much more predictively calculate, with the data that we have at our exposure today, how successful we will be with, X, Y, Z type of algorithm for handling navigation moment to moment. Yeah. There's so much power in what we do. Or you look at going to Disneyland, there's a lot of game design in how a park is laid out, like Disneyland rides. And like I was learning all this stuff from Scott Rogers, one of his talks. Mm-hmm. And television, like grocery store, club. I can point out game design, me specifically, I guess. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be like, I don't know about these other fields, but like I can point out the game design and gamification in so many things that people just consider part of their everyday lives. We're like, hey, you just earned that free club. Yeah. And you did this and you earned that blankety blank, and your miles have now ranked up to this. Now you're a double gold member. Mm-hmm. And if you just fly 10 more times, you're going to, like the way that all these incentives are designed, the way that people are being manipulated with advertising. Oh my God. I'm starting to go on one of those old man tangents.
No, but it's true. Like the world is changing towards gamification and engagement, right? Yeah. The move with YouTube is a clear case of them not just about the view counts, but how long someone actually stays on to watch video, because that's the real value. Yeah. Netflix is seeing the same thing. Like we have these people watching movies 2 hours at a time. How do we extend that experience? Yeah. Oh, what about interactive watching? What is that, and how viable is that? And it's basically gaming. Yeah. So the jobs for game developers is vastly becoming very important as part of society. Fortnite making it like a common cultural phenomenon that every parent and kid alike knows that game. Don't shit on games as much, right? Yeah. The conversation 10 years ago was like, oh, someone played Doom, therefore that's why that kid is shooting up the school or something like that. That was the narrative for gaming. Now you're seeing them on Jimmy Fallon. You're seeing Fortnite having an effect on sports, like people doing the dances. Everybody is respecting it as an art form now, as an entertainment value and a viable advertising avenue for all these corporations to go to and be like, hey, we want a piece of this. So that's why we see the entry of Amazon, the entry of Google, Facebook, right? These are major tech companies that, even though these are our tech cousins that work at these places, and some of them got interested in tech because of gaming, there's a shift of the old guards, where they are in these power positions, and understanding like how game development and gaming is a major sell, right? It's a major market that these tech companies didn't have participation before.
Yeah.
And like, to be fair, like Facebook had that Facebook web browse type of games with the Mafia games and all that stuff before, until mobile really took that away, right? It was a weird transition now.
Yeah.
Like mobile, just no one understood what mobile gaming could look like, and then those Flash games started to transfer over, and it was like getting major hits.
I think I don't want to say blame. I attribute like the success of mobile's like giant upswing to the touchscreen iPhone.
Yeah.
Because prior to that, it was the like 2-inch screen Nokia, like 256 color, like just the types of gaming experiences that we had available to us at the time were just not that great, not that enthusiastic for me as a consumer to be like, oh, I will invest lots of time into this. I can get addicted to Snake.
Yeah.
Like, no, not really.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I know that touchscreen iPhone, like when I started seeing games come out on that, you really started to see the potential, like the game design and the ideas of the like, hey, this is a bus stop game. And a bus stop game is like, look, it's just simple loop, simple mechanic, and it has lots of depth. It'll fill up time. You'll enjoy yourself. And then, hey, what do you know? There's the bus. Yeah. But, you know, Flappy Bird, Angry Bird, like freaking all these, like the first game that I think that was big that I remember was like Trism, something like that. And like, we all remember the I Fart days. And they made $800,000 and all you do is fart and all that stuff. And then forget about it. Yeah. Forget about it.
Yeah. The transitional games have always been interesting because, they're the first to market, right? Everyone was just trying to get a product out there that had like a little gimmick that people find it shareable, right? Yeah. And then that catches on. We can talk about if we really talk about like the big innovators, we go back all the way to Project Xenon or something, XBLA, right? With the small indie games, because I remember back in the 2K, like 10 years ago, there was a couple of the guys that were working there like, hey, we're going to quit this AAA job. The game hasn't even shipped yet, right? We're still working on it. And we're going to do this thing on the XBLA. Yeah. I was like, what? What is that? You're quitting a stable job. Take a chance and do this thing. And this is like, I think even shortly before Meat Boy, right? Super Meat Boy. Or all his indie titles that really made it big. And so that was that started the whole the Flash game on Facebook thing, and then that transitioned into the mobile games, and then now we're seeing back to console. So like I feel like a lot of these guys that initially bet on indie titles, there was a weird period where they abandoned it a bit, right? They took a step back because I felt like let's take Xbox as an example. Yeah. They took a step back from the XBLA. Right, they didn't emphasize it as much at a certain period. Right, it didn't feel like they gave it so much attention. But now they're going back into it because now they have like this Game Pass,
Xbox, and all that.
Yeah, I do get Xbox and Game Pass that definitely needs great content, and the only people that can churn that many content are indie developers.
Yeah, or at least give you the cadence that you want. You can get small teams that can do well enough, you know.
Yeah, and now we're also in the age where we see our friends who are traditionally game developers working over at Tesla and SpaceX or Google. It's like, what are you doing over there? Not games. Well, the definition of games. Getting paid better. But the definition of games are very loose now. Like, what is a game? It's just interactivity on a consumer level, right?
Yeah, if you consider yourself an interactive experience developer that knows a lot about game design or game development, that's cool. But like, you as an artist that does 3D models, you could probably be just as effective in doing stuff for movies. You could be just as effective in doing stuff for AR, VR, simulations.
Definitely right now, yeah.
Essentially, you're using the same skills. I've created the props that made this environment believable that you're walking through.
Well, right now it's very interesting. It's
I changed the scale to human versus like Pikachu or whatever.
Everybody's skill set is transferring. It's not even transferring. It's more the more film
applicable.
Not even applicable. These other industries are looking at game techniques as the way forward. Got you. Right? They're asking game developers how to make So it's a reversal that I didn't anticipate even 4 years ago before we started our podcast. This is an industry that has been growing in the span of a year and a half. I think mostly thanks to Unreal 4 being such a graphical fidelity powerhouse, right? With its strong tool set, it makes it a lot easier to convince, right? Once you have something like this looks just as good as your rendering, now you can walk over with your client and show the blueprints around, right? It's an exciting time that I'm so impressed. Even though we are cynical in our own way about the industry, I'm so impressed how organically we just tend to break from the constraints, just naturally, right? And that just tells how our technology is so important that no matter how many times a major corporation tries to limit your creativity, that eventually it's going to burst, and that game developers will have their time to shine. And we're talking about game developer rights and having better work-life balance and all this stuff. They're finding that just in other ways, in other industries, which is very, I don't know. Like, let's really crack into that. Like, what does that mean? Is there ever going to be a future that you feel that the traditional game development scene companies would actually start to implement changes that we've always been proposing, which is just no crunching, fair work wages, fire and hire, sure, but at least have some buffer, right, at the beginning of the contract that they can live off of?
Well, I guess I look at it and say I believe yes, because what I'm seeing is less and less people entering the game industry workforce through traditional means. Obviously, AI is closing down a lot of schools, which means less places for you to go brick and mortar style to learn how to do what we do. Although tools are online and more free and they're more available, I know the talent pool is potentially spreading, and that may work against what my point here is being. But like, the first thing that I see that's hurting and cannibalizing the game industry that will change is the churn. The like, oh, we just chew people up and spit them out, and then, okay, cool. Well, that's on your reputation, and your reputation is going to have to absorb that, and then the industry is going to have to absorb that. Like, it trickles up from the micro level to the macro level, because people are going to say this shouldn't be how it is. Especially when I know that, like, the guy that I used to sit across from who does what I do now works at Tesla, having a great time, has a new Tesla and a brand new home. Like, why would I sit here and continue to let you make yourself rich off of my sweat? And I'm going to go over there where everyone is getting rich together. I think the old guard of doing business, and I think the publicly traded companies are going to be the first ones to really royally fuck up and then realize that they have to course correct. But the course correction is going to be too late, because all the burned people are going to be going off to do the right thing the right way already, and then they'll be the ones that are established. That's
the only thing that I'm fearing is exactly that. Like, before we figure this stuff out, all the talent that is worth the money will be at these other companies.
Well, why would I stay in the game industry and like?
That's exactly what I'm seeing right now. There's a huge exodus about with these developers that are discovering other industries, using the same skill set, and honestly probably working way less, with more salary, right? And better perks. Will there ever be a situation where they ever go back? Unless it's just for curiosity and interest, right? It's not going to be the money. It's not going to be the perks. I don't see a traditional AAA game development, being able to offer half as much, because the business itself is the problem, right? The business of selling a $60 game, the traditional way on a 3 to 5 year development scene, and hoping that it's going to succeed, right, is not going to work. And there's a lot of games still being made that way, which is very surprising, right? But then these guys are trying to figure out the DLC, the microtransaction, and I feel like it's making it worse.
Just look at the new 2K basketball game, man. We had a conversation about that recently with a friend of ours, and like, the non-skippable commercials,
straight up commercials in your game.
That is a telltale sign of things to come. Like to have the audacity to do it, but then stand by it and be like, no, that's just how we're rocking because we got all this money.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. No problem. Set your company on fire. Go for it.
Yeah.
Set the industry on fire by setting a precedent that other people will follow. And then, you know, I don't know. Like, I don't want to be like, woe is the industry. But I know that these things there's time in between the cause and effect. Right now we're seeing the thing that is going to cause the effect that will happen in the future. But when that thing happens in the future, if I'm still around, it'll be great times because we won't see this kind of bullshit anymore.
Yeah, so that only leaves room for the large companies to actually be able to do those AAA games, right? And maybe that is the way to do it, where if you're willing to spend $300 million to develop a game, that you can take that. But that's a crazy risk, isn't it?
I think that's what's going to kill these big companies is they're going to be like, man, now we have to compete again with PS5 graphics and Xbox 2 graphics, and it's going to take us X many man months to do XYZ. It's going to cost $400 million now. We need to sell $80 games. And people are going to be like, yeah, but, you know, I'm just going to go to this free-to-play thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to just rock out over there.
But that's the type of situation that these companies find themselves in because they
created it.
They created it, and they look at ways to cut costs, and that is mostly on the employees' back, right? Crunch time, lower talent, pushing out bigger talent that costs more money. Mm-hmm. They're always looking for ways what the bottom line is, and that's probably why that's causing the most issues, right, among game developers. It's like, don't work on anything but this. Constantly be unhappy. Constant turnover rate. Because most people that come into these like big bonuses type of deals is like, you know, I'm just going to give it 1 year. Cash in, cash out. And we're not getting the type of quality I feel that we're used to, where it's like a proven team sticking together and making it easier the next cycle around. So that hasn't changed. Like that is something we saw way before we started the podcast 4 years ago, and that has not changed. And I think it's gotten worse, right? Microtransaction was just a small thing 4 years ago. It was mostly DLC, right?
How many years ago?
4 years ago.
4 years ago? You think so? Microtransactions has been around for a long time.
For mobile.
Yeah, for mobile. You mean like for
AAA? For it to be in the headlines right now.
Okay.
Right? No one was... Okay. People were complaining about microtransactions with mobile, but they are more forgivable because it's like...
They knew that their game cost 99 cents or less.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now we're seeing the problems that you're talking about,
the big
where
games pulling it
$60 game with a commercial in it?
Yeah.
What am I buying here? Buying commercials? Yeah. With the commercials? It's the same reason I didn't like Hulu at first. They did that tab. Yeah. When I bought in $5 membership, and I was still seeing commercials, and I gotta upgrade to a premiere one with no commercials. Why did I buy it for?
Yeah. Just give me free TV again.
But that just...
I already have the commercials.
That even tells me the corporation, they're struggling, right? Yeah. They're struggling as a corporation. Right? And they don't know what to do to charge more than the $60 content. It's
not that hard to just look at it from the customer's perspective and say, how can we deliver what they would want to pay for, right? Like, obviously, I don't want commercials, right? Yeah. Obviously, if you survey or if you know what other people are charging, you can see that, like, customers are, like, interested in $10 or less streaming platform with no commercials. Yeah. Can I produce that? If the answer is no, then leave it alone. If the answer is yes and competitively, then go for it. You know what I mean? Don't try to put it on us that like, oh, we can't just make a $60 game and be profitable. So we have to do all these extra things to screw the customer over in order for this to be profitable. Like, no way, man. Just do good business. Make a thing that you can afford to make that you can competitively produce and then just do better business than your competitors.
Yeah. I think that's the time when the corporation shows you a graph and like, hey, look at this. Man. Well, it's greed, but it also, like the consumer nowadays are a lot different. Yeah. Everyone expects high quality, free, not even cheap, just free, right? Yeah. That's what they expect now because the precedent that we have shown gamers is exactly that. First of all, with the Kickstarter, unrealistic expectations, right? Where, again, the bigger developers come onto that platform and just ruin the landscape of what to expect for a small chunk of money, right? Yeah. That already ruins it. The iPhone games, right? Having quality content now, but for 99 cents or free, mostly free now, right? We confuse the market so much that when we tell them to pay a certain amount for what would be logistically realistic to actually make the game, they don't believe it.
Yeah.
And it's not them. It's not for us to blame them, right?
Yeah.
We fucked it up. There was no standardization of our products and quality, and I don't think we're making it any better.
Yeah.
Now we're charging commercials. Now people who buy $60 games can expect to pay more to get all the content that was promised. And then on their side, it's like, wait, they mostly figure that that we're holding back content on launch, right? So although we feel like 4 years ago when we started the podcast, some problems were at least more transparent. I don't think. Do you feel like we're in a better place than 4 years ago as an industry?
No.
So
Not
you
at
felt
all.
like it got a lot worse
I think we're just in a different
for developers in the development.
I think we're in a different place. I see a lot of developers who looked at being on a AAA game as like, oh, this is going to be great. 4 years of job security are not really.
Oh, no
seeing
one's
that.
looking at that anymore.
Yeah, no way.
Good. Thank God.
I see a lot of these big studios that are like, hey, you know what? It's profitable to just lay off a ton of people after we're done with the game, right? And are not facing like the gallows for that kind of behavior. So that like that reaffirms that like they can get
I feel
away
like
with
it's even more rampant.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's exactly. And
For Activision to say 800 people, that I didn't see. Could not see that move like 4 years ago.
So then you add that on top of the harassment things that are happening at big studios, the racist things that are happening as people are just being a person of color in the game industry, and how toxic they have to deal. Man, please.
It got worse.
This landscape right now is. There are good things. There are great things. There are great communities, and there are shining points. Yeah. But I see a lot more of the bad showing up. I'm not giving you a ratio of like it's this much good and this much bad, but I am saying the bad has increased. The bad has increased.
What are some of the good things that you can highlight that you feel like as an industry we're gotten better?
I will never get
opportunities definitely gotten better.
I think that there's more that I can do in the industry right now with less people.
Yeah.
I think the tools being free, like Maya, Autodesk doing the like Maya and Max indie license now. Have you heard of that?
Oh yeah.
$230 a year for Maya or Max for like the indie version. But that's way better than $1,600 or $2,500 or whatever it used to be for the
Just
year.
make it free, bro. Until you profit. This is where Autodesk. Until you sponsor us, I will say this. You are so backwards in your way of thinking. Look at every other software where it's like it's free to use for indie developers until you reach this royalty profit margin.
They're kind of doing that. It's just that they're basically doing essentially it's $20 a month for paid all at once. If you hit more than 100,000, then you have to get the full license. So it's roughly like the Adobe.
No. It's free.
That's what the math works out to.
It's free until look. This is so dumb. Blender is free.
Yeah.
Blender has been championed
by the community,
and legitimate corporations. Ubisoft have thrown in support.
Yes.
Epic has given it some investment through its mega grant to help build that up. Autodesk looks at this as like, hey, you see what I see? There's a lot of small indie developers that are willing to use 3D programs to make their game. We can get in on this by charging them $230. That is the wrong way of thinking. They should have looked at Blender as like, this is a threat. It's free. We should be free too until they make X amount of money. Yeah. Because even Blender's, it's free forever, right?
Yeah. It's free.
Yeah, and
it's not timeshare free.
It's not even competitive. Yeah. It's not even competitive if they say we'll charge you later. But Maya and Max is a respected platform for game developers within the.
I'll say this, man.
Workflow
like, for me, because I got my feet wet in Maya, I was excited about this news because once my educational because I was teaching at a college, so I'm still within the 3 years, but it's probably like a week or two away, maybe even maybe a couple months, because I haven't taught in it feels like around 3 years.
Yeah.
But I made sure to get my licensed teacher copy just so I could keep practicing. I could probably handle the $200, the $230 a year.
But even
then,
then,
I grew in it, right? So
right.
like I'm kind of attached to it.
You're attached to it.
If I was like an 18-year-old, 17-year-old who was like, I want to do this games thing, there's no way I'm picking anything but Blender.
Yeah.
Like it's
but over. Even now, as I'm advising you, just do Blender, man, because they changed the UI and the controls to where you can jump in and figure things out now. Yeah. It's their recent overhaul update is like a huge facelift. Yeah. Because UI and everything else was crappy before, but now it got legitimized. So if you're an indie developer, unless you're thinking about going into AAA development or working within a studio, there's no reason for you to touch that software. Yeah. Because Autodesk guys until you sponsor us, are really slow with their updates. And somehow it's the only software that makes it worse. With every update.
Yeah. Even if Autodesk sponsors us, though, like I'm just going to be real, man. Yeah. I will tell you straight up where you're fucking up or where you're doing well. Yeah. And it won't have anything to do with the money, right? Like, I know it's a joke. I'm not calling you out. It's more like I'm just saying, I think that I'll give them credit for taking such a major step. This is like a 90% discount, essentially, if you really look at it. That's pretty good. The people who were used to be charging $2,500 or whatever they were charging to now charge $235 under $100,000 of revenue for your business. Yeah, it's a great step. It means that there's a potential that they would then have to reevaluate even how far they've came. Did they achieve their objective, and is it better to go maybe $9 a month or something like that? Because $9 a month is free enough for me. I would pay $9 a month. I'm paying $50 for Photoshop and Lightroom. You know what I mean? $20 for Maya is not so bad.
Adobe sucks, dude. For that reason, man.
So you use GIMP? Do you use or do you go straight to like Substance or something?
No, well, Substance is Adobe now.
So your Mixer.
I just don't like.
I know we know how to use their tools.
I just don't like the pay model. Of course, Adobe. If you're a professional, there's no alternative to Adobe, right? You have to use their suite of products. Obviously, for film, streaming, all this stuff, they're still king. There's no second, because when there is a second, they buy them up, right? They are that strong.
But I mean, you specifically though, could you get away with just using like the Quixel tools?
Without Photoshop?
If you don't have to do like actual texture stuff, like just painting diffuse like we used to back in the day.
Before Adobe bought Substance, you can get away with just Substance.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
You didn't have to use Photoshop as much. Yeah. Right? It became more of a preference. Now that they bought it, yes, technically you can really rely on Quixel, but when you're doing masks and stuff, it's not Photoshop, right? Yeah. So you're still somewhat relying on Adobe to kind of. Photoshop is there for a good cause.
So then it sounds like they're a couple tools away from being irrelevant.
But this is the problem with the major softwares, right? Autodesk, Adobe, these guys that have like a monopoly in that field, they stop innovating. It's really disheartening because like it's the reason why they stop innovating, why it gives way to Substance and Quixel to kind of fill those needs, right? It's crazy that they don't look at this data for game development and be able to tell like, hey, if we stop updating real updates, we're allowing competitors to come in. And maybe that's fine. Maybe they're like, hey, when they're actually pretty good, we'll buy them up. No problem. And it becomes us. But that's just so, I don't know. I don't like that way of thinking. You have such a huge user base, and you're just pissing them off constantly. So with Autodesk, yes. A lifer using their 3D software. But I've just been so disappointed in the last, 5 to 10 years. Yeah. They've changed nothing. And I'm looking over at like smaller 3D software like Modo and all these hard surfacing 3D packages. And they're doing all these crazy new shit. And of course, no one's stopping me from going over there. Except that when I'm working within a studio, you want to prefer some lateralness with your coworkers, right? Especially when it's dictated by your technical artist that's making tools for Maya, right? That's the reason why people are using more Maya than Max, mainly because Maya is more open to creating tools for. And when I started my career, it was all Max, but because of that reason, more of the team development disciplines can work together with Maya. So therefore, we went with Maya.
Yeah.
And so I learned Maya.
Yeah.
But then, you see all these cool ways to kind of speed up your workflow with these other programs. You just wish your program would actually take notice and apply those things, and they don't.
Yeah.
And they choose not to. And it's just like, come on, guys, do something. But that type of frustration is on the game development tools, right? But it's the type of frustration that if I were to talk to an employer, it's like you see like these things that are happening with the indie scene. You're seeing these things happening with the other industries using game development tech.
Yep.
But you're stuck with the same employer who are still limiting your creativity and outside endeavors, thinking that it's a threat to their business. It's insane. It's like, we don't like how you're going out there and becoming a better artist.
We don't want you to go practice shooting hoops when you get home. Just only get better at basketball when you're here in our training facility.
Yes,
and only play for us.
That's,
if you go home and play horse with your sons or like do foul shots and shit, nah, we can't have that.
That stranglehold has gotten tighter. I think when we started 4 years ago, it's definitely gotten a lot tighter. Like, I talked to friends working at these major companies, right, that can afford developers having fun outside of work. It's just straight up within the contract of even coming onto the team. You can, everything that you work on, inside or outside this premises, we own. Isn't that crazy?
I wouldn't sign that.
Isn't that crazy though?
It's audacious.
But that was something I felt years ago that people would not include, because break it down, man. Like, you own everything I do.
Yeah. I wrote a song for my little girl to sing her to go to sleep at night. Somebody heard it put on the radio, and I made $4 million. Let's just say. But nope, sorry, that's ours.
Because there is no communication between the developers right now that they can get away with this type of stuff.
The only reason why they would want to say something like that is because they want, beyond a shadow of a doubt, you to need your job so bad that you'll never not want to do it unless you get another job. Yeah. Because then they know that, like, all right, our art director is going to be our art director. There's less things that are going to pull him away from doing that. The only way that he could leave is if he quit to get another opportunity, or he quit knowing that, hey, him writing songs must be so damn important. Yeah. But anybody in that gray area is going to stay with their job. It's all about keeping you in that position because, excuse me, it's less variables for them, right? More guarantees.
Well, I mean, as we do. It's almost an hour. So I'm going to ask you this question. Okay. On our road to 300 episode. I'm going to ask 3 questions, right?
Did you get this from the audience, or are you?
No, this is from me, man. All right. Natural curiosity, because that's how we do it. Where do you feel we should be? Well, no. We know where we should be. Where do you think we'll be in 300 episode, right? How many years? It's like 2 years from now.
300 episodes.
As an industry.
We're about to hit 108. So, yeah, that's a little less than 2 years.
In 2 years' time, right? By the 300th episode, do you feel like we're going to be talking about the same problems? Extrapolate? If we were to measure, the progress the last 4 years.
That's very interesting. 2 years from now, what do I think we'll be talking about?
Our game developers are
still talking about a lot of the same stuff. I think
Do you think people are still being sexually harassed? You think it's going to be worse
after
all these news stories coming out?
You know how long sexual harassment has been a thing?
But these 2
years is not going to...
These game companies they've been slapped on the wrist, right? Do you feel
no one has gone to jail. Okay. You know what I mean? Like, no one has gone to jail. No one has done anything other than, like, paper punishment. You know what I mean? Like, oh, we put him in training. We made him do X, Y, and Z.
It's going to be more gloves during harassment.
Until someone is like, oh, nope, gone to court, convicted, guilty, 4 years for a sexual misconduct in the workplace or something like that. Okay. Until you see that happen, the shockwave isn't going to be powerful enough because they think money and connections will just push it under. Right. It'll go
unaffected then. Yeah, exactly. So it's going to get worse.
I think sexual harassment will still be here in 2 years.
Okay. The game crunching culture, all that stuff.
I for sure believe that will still be here in 2 years. I still think that there's going to be big time crunch projects because I don't see the $60 game dead yet. I don't see the $300 million game yet. 2 years from now, I would love to be asked that question again.
Yeah.
But over the next 2 years, especially because the new consoles are coming out, I don't see the crunch culture dying. I actually see it kind of getting worse for some of the studios who are going to be making the like launch day products for PS5, Xbox 2, and then even those first 2 to 3 years of like trying to get the sales of those consoles high enough that they don't have to work as hard on the game. Like Sony sold 100 million PS4s now. Yeah. Right? Where we're talking about making PS5, like within a couple of months, we might start seeing real PS5 stuff. Yeah. When the PS4 first came out, they were selling like, 3 million units. Yeah. 4 or 5, yay. 6 million units total. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I still see making $400 million to make a game and you only have 4 million, 5 million people to sell it to. Ooh, man. Some companies are going to take a hit big time.
Do you feel veterans are going to stay more than leave?
The next 2 years, I think.
Leaving as in like the traditional game developer, but like maybe going to the enterprise side.
I see droves of more people, especially artists, like en masse leaving the game industry for greener pastures in tech, greener pastures in previs or simulation film. Yeah. Exactly. There's more industries that need their skills that
will pay better,
that are going to pay better, way better, that didn't come up under the way that like
some of these Steam money.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I'm seeing too. Money. Well, I mean, they have an alternate revenue stream that isn't reliant on their end product being successful or not, and that's something the game industry and very few game companies have figured out. Yeah, and that is not going to change.
Yeah, so I see those are my Swami predictions.
All these.
Unless you had another question.
I have one more question. Okay. All these Fortnite lovers, right? Mm-hmm. Those huge gush of young gamers. Mm-hmm. Do you see a huge influx of game developers from them?
Yes. Huge convert. Fortnite added creative mode, which is like a huge sandbox where, from what I've seen, like I've seen people making these like amazing death traps. I've seen people make these like musical, like, I've made my favorite song, or I've, and like, I'm not saying that Fortnite is responsible for this next wave, but I definitely see a lot of people who are in Fortnite, especially if they're like enjoying themselves in creative mode, are going to get that like, wow, it's really cool to build a thing and like interact with it and show it to other people. And then they try it. And then that loop is what gets people excited about making games. Yeah. So I'll give them that credit 100%. I definitely see like a lot of people who would leave a creative mode interested in, or even like Dreams, right? Like Dreams is going to be another one of those windows. If you've played or know about Dreams on the PS4, that game is essentially just literally making game developers left and right. So I definitely see like a huge portion of the people that play Fortnite, specifically speaking, those who enjoy creative mode from 18 or under, I could see them transitioning into like, this must be like, I could get a job doing this. Yeah. This is people will pay me. Yeah. I can see that.
It makes a lot of sense because even with us growing up, like I didn't know about it until I flipped through a magazine, right? Yeah. And now Fortnite being so readily available and purposely showing kids or young adults that they can make games for a living. The conversion must be astronomical compared to when we were starting. Super excited about that. I hope we have a place for them. Yeah. Because 2 years down the line is going to be very interesting. I think a lot of the things that we talked about in some ways did improve. In most ways it didn't, which is very disappointing and very scary, right? We talked about 4 years ago. I thought shining a light on it, and especially the past year, a lot of light has been shown on these bad practices. Yeah. Not really seeing a huge dent. Like I'm not seeing like a big shift, right? And maybe at some point we'll have Emma back on to kind of give us an update, but maybe she has a better finger on the pulse about that situation. We remain hopeful. Yeah. I mean, what we do see are a lot of opportunities, a lot of people interested in game development. And it starts with respect, right? Yeah. Respecting the industry, and then hopefully that turns over to like treating everybody better. And that pretty much covers it, man.
All right, guys. Happy 200. Thank you for being here. If you've been here for all 200 episodes, oh my God. Big hug from me and Brandon, seriously. Thank you for the support. Thanks for the time, because that's a lot of time. It's roughly 200 or so hours of, let me listen to what these idiots have to say. Let me see what they're talking about.
Yeah, and we're here, these two idiots, every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. We're streaming it live. If you are connected and watching us somehow, you will find us, basically. If you missed any of these episodes and want to have an idea of what other things we're doing, go to our youtube.com/bluechamps. If you want to support us, go to our patreon.com/bluechamps to give us $1 or $2 to reach our immediate next goal. And you want to make a direct donation, give it to us.
My personal PayPal account is...
Yeah, there we go. We got to put it down there sometime. But that pretty much concludes it. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We are basically on every day of the week. So, see ya.
I'm Larry Charles. I'm saying good night.